Hey, my name is Aaron Charlton. I have a PhD in marketing from University of Oregon. I work in digital marketing and I also do a little bit of sales. I mainly work for doctors' offices. At least recently I have. In the past, I've worked for a lot of different kinds of companies, helping them rank higher in Google and promote their business. Today, I want to talk about negative feedback. So, negative feedback is something that business owners hate. They don't want to look at it, they don't want to read it. A lot of times, it can be unfair. Sometimes you just don't want to look that closely at what you're doing wrong. You don't want to have to make changes because it's uncomfortable. And some of the feedback is just false, so you don't want to deal with it. Well, so I'm diving into it so you don't have to, and looking at what is the general themes of negative feedback that come in for doctors' offices. I figured that by doing this, I can help some doctors' offices or other businesses improve their service that they provide and their reputation online. Two birds with one stone. So let's go ahead and get into this. Here's a quick quote. This patient is actually praying that no one else has to go through the experience they went through. That was a bad experience. And we see things like this a lot. A lot of really, it takes a lot for a person to get to the point where they leave a 1-star review for a business because people are busy. They don't have time for that. You have to really wrong them for people to get to that point. And sometimes it's the person, it says more about the person or their insurance than it does about the actual clinic or the provider. But in either way, they have to get to a really low point where they're very upset before they leave a negative review. So what I did was I was able to get a little over 35,000 1-star Google reviews from doctors' offices in Phoenix. I put together a word cloud here. In this bubble, this shows the most common issues and topics that came up. A lot of people talked about rudeness, insurance issues, wait times, scheduling issues, stuff about the doctor. For this analysis, I used mainly R statistical software to do a lot of the quantitative analysis. I also used ChatGPT. I used AI to group things together and categorize a lot of the data. And I manually reviewed a sample of it to kind of get some ideas of the themes. I've also been looking at negative feedback, specifically for doctors' offices, for many, many years, as I've seen it flow in for my clients. And a lot of it has been revealing. I worked for one practice, this was years ago, I don't work for them anymore, but they had people complaining about the smell, which was atrocious. It smelled really bad. There was like a break room where they would always get Indian food catered every day, and the Indian food smelled amazing in the break room, but in the waiting room, it's the worst smell you could think of. I don't want to describe it here, but just think of a really bad smell. That's what they had. The other issue was there was like a stain on the ceiling in one of the ceiling tiles, and people kept bringing that up. And I didn't even realize how big of problems these were for the patients. And it should have been obvious, in retrospect, like, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you notice? But until I saw these consistent complaints roll in, then I was like, yeah, we better do something about that. So anyway, negative feedback can really help you improve not only the quality of service, but also your reputation online by looking at it, seeing what can be improved, and executing. So these are some of the main takeaways that I got from this study. Number one, most people like their doctor. Even people that complained and had a horrible experience and they pray that nobody has to go there, but they like their doctor. And it's hard to explain, but I think it has to do with just the fact that they're having that in-person interaction with them. Most of the time, people tend to think that their provider, even if it was a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant, generally they seem to think their provider is friendly and competent. There are some complaints that we'll get to geared towards providers, but generally most of the issues were focused on things that relate to the company and staff. And they tend to blame these they tend to feel like the corporation doesn't care about them, the processes are terrible, and things like that. They don't really put it as much on the doctor. It's more on the actual corporation and the people who work there, the non-medical providers who work there. And most of the complaints relate to the back office stuff. So these are not in-person interactions. These are things where, you're checking to see if their insurance will be accepted. And this is stuff that you're handling before they even come in a lot of cases. You're trying to schedule them. Those things can really frustrate people. So I've chosen this picture here. Actually, I had chat draw this for me. This shows a doctor who's amazing that everybody loves right in front of a medical facility that is poorly run and burning to the ground. And this is kind of the perception people have, it's like, oh, this doctor, wow, it's like he's made by AI because he's so fantastic. But look at that hospital behind him. It's the worst ever. And this is kind of a consistent theme that I've been seeing for years, and it really came through in the data. But again, that back office, so it's those unseen interactions that cause most of the pain points. People aren't complaining as much about the in-person, although they do. We'll go through that. But it's really that offline, back office, remote stuff that can really irk people. So again, it's not as common as you might think, but people do complain about the providers. They're complaining about the incorrect diagnosis, unnecessary procedures, poor attitude, insufficient attention. A lot of times people feel like they're rushed, like they're just kind of entering data the whole time. And really, the modern healthcare provider, this is something that needs to be addressed or dealt with somehow. But more and more, providers are kind of treated like factory workers, where it's just like next, next, next. And I think people see that and feel that, and it really bothers them because they want people to spend time with them. They want a social connection as well as, diagnosis type stuff. They're also concerned like you didn't spend enough time to really learn about them or their problem. So these are things that come up, but again, it's not as common as you might think. Even fixing these problems, you have issues of like you have to get a certain number of patients through in a day in order to keep the lights on, and most of the issues patients have don't relate to the provider treatment. So this is an area, in my opinion, where it's a little difficult to make a difference. There are some exceptions. There are some providers, and this is not based on my data, but it's based on just my observations. But there's some popular providers that are very popular, very personable. The patients love them, and they're willing to overlook some back office problems. So some of the complaints directed at clinic and staff include poor communication, people are rude or don't care, they can't get scheduled, or they show up for their appointment and it didn't happen or didn't happen at the right time. And then there's always like billing and insurance issues. So if people are blindsided by out-of-pocket costs that they didn't expect, they're going to be frustrated and angry about it. Here's a quote. With my visits, I was usually treated very rudely and not seen for at least an hour past my appointment time. Very typical quote that we see lots. And when I talk about long wait times, we're talking about not only does it take a while to get from the waiting room into the exam room, but you might have to sit a long time in the exam room as well. And then you might have to wait months to just even get in to see your provider. So there's just wait times all over the place. Waiting on the phone on hold, just like this never-ending stream of wasting patients' time. And this is a big challenge that medical facilities have to deal with as they try to become more and more efficient in terms of their own time. But the sacrifice and the trade-off is that patients are unhappy with all their time being wasted. So as far as recommendations, I do think you should always solicit feedback from your patients. If you're collecting feedback from your patients, then the good thing about that is they're less likely to leave you a 1-star review on Google or Yelp because they've been able to air their grievances already. And then you could follow up with them, have your manager follow up with them and see, at least talk it through with them and see if you can resolve it. That's going to eliminate a lot of the negative feedback that you get. Number two is you should read patient complaints and learn from them. They're teaching you something. They're screaming, trying to tell you something. They're trying to give you feedback so that you can improve things, so that you don't put other people through the same pain that you put them through. Third, recommend that you really look at your back office processes, everything from your software you use for your phone and your medical records to how people are handling the phones, how scheduling is done, to really remove a lot of the pain points and friction. If we can do these things on the back office, you're going to have a lot more satisfied patient base. And number four is be nice. I think this is always, obviously an important thing, that if we can do this, if you can be nice to your staff, they're more likely to be nice to your patients. If you can recruit people that are friendly and nice, these are all things that can make the experience better and therefore improve your reputation at the same time. If you have a lot of positive feedback online, it makes it easier to get referrals. It reduces cancellations if you have a higher, positive feedback. Generally, it helps all around. So I really recommend you take a look at these things and see what improvements you can make. And please reach out if you have any questions. Again, my name is Aaron Charlton at Charlton Digital. Thank you.